Today, many scientists assume that all of these instinctive behaviors can ultimately be traced back to the genome of the animal, which somehow or other programs the neuronal structures in the brain in such a way as to produce, these instinctive behaviors. This, I believe, is not a proven fact. It's an assumption that many scientists make based on their materialistic, reductionistic picture of reality. There's no other way for them to explain these things in terms of that worldview. Of course, I respect intellectual freedom. If there are scientists who wish to try to explain things in this way, I respect their right to do so. However, I would expect them to be honest about the level of explanation that they've actually achieved according to their assumptions and the methodologies with which they are working. As far as I know, no scientist has ever traced any complex pattern of instinctive behavior back to some specific genetic structures in the DNA of an animal. And we have the further problem that many of these behaviors are extremely complex. They require coordination between the behavior and the origin of some physical structures in the body. For example, some fish have, as part of their bodies, very interesting lures which look like small fish or worms that they dangle in front of other small fish to attract them into their mouths. So this is a very complex interaction, not only of behavior, but of physical structures in the organism. So in order to completely explain how these things arose simply by evolution, by natural selection, is really quite difficult. And as far as I'm aware, no such pattern of complex instinctive behavior has been explained in any thorough way by specifying what changes in the genome of an animal took place that actually caused it to develop these complex behaviors and the organic structures that are associated with these behaviors. We're talking here about the origin of new features of fish, new behaviors, for example, new structures. So what they would have to say in terms of their theory is that in populations of these fish, there are some mutations in their genetic structure that result in physical changes in the organism's structure or behavior. How that actually happens is quite a mystery. You would have to specify that the mutation takes place not in just any cell of the fish. It would have to take place in its reproductive cells, either the sperm or the eggs, in order for it to be passed on to the next generation of fish. So somehow or other, some mutation would have to take place in the genetic structure of one of the reproductive cells of a fish, a certain species of fish. Say a species of fish without, say, a complex behavior for attracting other little fish into its mouth with a lure. But that's very difficult to explain because all that a gene does is tell the cells in an organism how to construct proteins from amino acids. That's all that a gene really does. It specifies a string of amino acids to be combined together to form a protein. That's what it does. So one would have to specify at which stage in the cell division process, as you go from a single fertilized egg with this new mutation in it, as it starts, for example, if it's to form a lure in the mouth of the fish, that means somehow or other, this genetic mutation would have to be turned on at a certain stage in the cell division process, probably millions of cells, millions of steps later in the cell division process, at a time when the structure of the mouth is being developed in the embryo of the fish, such that you get the beginnings of a new structure. And it's very difficult to propose that the whole structure will just immediately develop in one step. And therefore, you would have to be able to say that another mutation takes place also in a reproductive cell of a fish, and it has to take place in the exact place in the genome that would result in a further development of this particular new organic structure, the little fish or worm lure in the mouth of this animal. This is the kind of explanation that's actually lacking in any scientific journal or set of scientific journals, exactly how, step by step, the complex instinctive behaviors and the physical changes that are associated with these instinctive behaviors are produced. We find lots of suggestions in a general way how these things may have arisen, but we do not find exact detailed explanations in terms of exact specification of genetic mutations, exact specifications of what new proteins are produced, exact specifications of at what time these proteins are produced in the cell division process of an organism. And in the absence of such detailed explanations, then I think it's legitimate to consider other possible explanations of how these instinctive behaviors may have become adopted, by these animals.